All right, I want to thank everybody for being here. Uh, this is, I think, a significant and important announcement of a program, an initiative that is already underway. There are at least two things, but certainly two things about this initiative that I think differentiate this from other initiatives that any other city in the country is doing. And I'm going to talk about it generally at first, and then I'm going to conclude with what I think are those two things that make this a different kind of initiative. We all know that society has cumulative and durable race-based inequities in play. There are social structures in place that create these racial inequities. And that's what institutional racism is about. And that institutional racism also gets coupled with and becomes a component with implicit bias that we all have. That's what institutional racism is. It does not mean that we are racists here in Austin or that we have a racist society. But what it does mean is that we have structures in place that create unjust and inequitable outcomes. It is to address those that I have formed and President Colette Pierce, Burnett, and Dr. Paul Cruz of AISD have agreed to lead a task force on institutional racism and on systemic inequities. The purpose of this task force is to focus on structures and systemic barriers, both intentional and unintentional. This is not to focus on individuals. That's not what the scope of this is. That's not what we're driving toward. Let me give you an example. None of us in this room helped write the 1928 land plan that was adopted in this city that sent different peoples to different parts of this city and denied folks utility service if they found themselves in the wrong part of town. But we are responsible for remediating the enduring legacy of inequities that continues to flow from what was a pretty horrific plan. That lives with us today as we are the most geographically segregated city in the country. We cannot add our power to past prejudice, even if we are well-intentioned. Now, I first spoke about this publicly after a couple police incidents involving Breon King and David Joseph. Folks, as you recall, were raising issues with respect to criminal justice and race. And I went before the community at that time in front of some of you, and I said it is great that we are having a meaningful conversation, and there were groups that were forming at that time to do that. But what I spoke about at the time was we needed to both do more than just have meaningful conversations, and second, we needed to recognize immediately that this was not just a challenge that was associated with a criminal justice system. It was something that we also saw in access to capital. It was also something that we saw in housing and in education and in tech and healthcare delivery. That what we were talking about here was something that was bigger. We're talking about institutional racism that is bigger than any one of those sectors. It is all of those sectors. It is our society. So this task force is formed with a group of volunteers, of leaders in our community that are going to form a steering committee. And under that steering committee are going to be 5 different working groups. Those 5 different working groups are going to be criminal and civil justice, one that deals with education, one that deals with health, one that deals with finance, banking and industry, and another that deals with real estate and housing. The people that are here are playing among those that are playing a leadership role with this task force. And I especially want to thank the co-chairs, Superintendent Paul Cruz and Houston-Tillotson President Colette Pierce Burnett. I also want to recognize some of the others that are playing a leading role here. ICM Hart, the new equity officer for the city, Brianna Oakes, Alba Serrano with Go Austin, Vamos Austin, Gava, Ashton Cumberbatch, and Dr. Kazike Prince. I want to emphasize that these folks are not being asked to lead discussion groups. I have asked this task force to come back to our community and give us an action plan by next March. This is a task force that is not seeking to go around or displace any of the institutions of governance that currently exist in the city. But my hope is that this task force will bring back specific ideas, specific things we can do in this community, in each of those 5 different areas, so that those ideas can be brought to me, can be brought to the council, can be brought to the boards and commissions that exist in the city, in hopes that we can actually work affirmatively on this issue. To deal with institutional racism and implicit bias in Austin, we need to acknowledge that both of them exist here. We need to own this challenge. And then we need to have an honest conversation about what we can do to root it out, and then we need to commit ourselves to actually taking affirmative action. I am here today to acknowledge and to own that challenge, to start that conversation, and to request that it leads to action. We are all in this together. None of us can tolerate persistent inequities. We all suffer from them. I need to use the privilege as mayor that I have to lift this problem up and to bring people together to work on solutions. This is hard work. Even the announcement in the newspaper that we had this morning has caused quite a little bit of dust-up already. I think that is good, because real change doesn't come without some measure, I think, of dust-up. And as this task force meets, I would ask it to keep a few things in mind. First is that it is important to lift up both equity and equality. I would say, second, don't be afraid to break some eggs. I'm not interested in just turning up the dial on the status quo. I want things to be shaken up. Don't be afraid to make me uncomfortable. Don't be afraid to make the community uncomfortable. I'm not looking for easy here. And finally, don't be afraid to fail so much that you do not try new things. You know, one of the best things that I have is the freedom to fail, and admittedly, that is a privilege that I have. I want this group to be free to fail, to try things that may not have ever been tried before in our community. So let's do this, because I am willing to put my time and my staff's time against what the good work that I believe this task force is going to bring. So please bring me something good. Violent incidents involving our police officers and community of color are disturbing. But it became obvious in the immediate aftermath of those events that we need not only to be committed to looking at that, but that is part of a larger question and challenge that we need to address. To deal with racism in Austin, we need to acknowledge that institutional racism and implicit bias exists. Let me conclude by identifying the two things about this initiative that I think make it unique among what I have seen other mayors do in their cities. The first is that this is continuing the conversations that existed this summer across the country, but it is a conversation here that is broader than just criminal justice. It is looking at our communities and our society in toto, because that's where this challenge exists. And second, while meaningful conversation is a good thing for a community to do, we have to do more than that. And the expectation here is that we will be able to bring back to the community in the spring of this year, at the end of March, an action plan for this community to consider. I want to thank the president and the superintendent for taking on the leadership of this effort while they're still doing their regular and full-time jobs. And I want to give you a chance to talk now as well.
Thank you, Mayor Adler. There's not much to add to what the mayor said. We clearly have our work cut out for us. The one thing I want to emphasize is the point about this is not about individuals. It's about Austin. And the motto of my own institution, Houston-Tillotson, is in union strength. And only in union will the community make progress. This is a big problem. No one is naive enough to think that it doesn't take a lot of will to move forward in this. It's hard work and hard work. Hard work and hard work. And the individuals that have been asked to serve on the steering committee and those individuals that will be asked to serve on the working groups, especially for the steering committee, those individuals for their personal and their professional lives are empowered to do the hard work and the hard work for Austin to embrace where Austin is. And it's funny because this is not a new problem. I strongly believe that the nation was lulled to sleep after the civil rights movement. What is new for me in this charge, and I'm very honored to take this charge on along with Dr. Cruz, is that when the mayor asked me to do this, he said that he wanted actionable ideas. And that's very different than just to continue to talk about it. So this is a beginning. There is no magic wand to this. It's a beginning, and it's a beginning, a very important first step. And we are a city of innovation, a city of creativity, a city of newness, a city of no fear. So why can't we take that and impress that upon another part that needs healing for the city, which is systemic inequities and racism? And so in closing, I just want to say that we need the support of all citizens, and our roles as the co-chairs is to guide this process to the actionable ideas so that we can present something forward that is something that can be done, something that can be tangible. And we may move the needle just a little bit, but that's more than the needle would move if we sit back and just continue to do more and more of nothing. So once again, I'm very honored and privileged and humbled, actually, to take this charge on to steer these advocates, these ambassadors, and these change agents to be able to do what's right for the city of Austin and for all of its citizens. And the operative word there is all of our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. I, too, am really honored with this. When you talk about the hard work and the heart work, so honored to be here alongside our president of Houston-Tillotson and Colette and the work that she's been doing. I think is so important. I'm really honored and humbled as well to be asked by our amazing mayor to lead this type of work, because it's the right work. It's not going to be easy. It's hard work, but it's the right work and it's worth doing. In Austin ISD, we believe that all means all. That is a tall order with 84,000 students and 12,000 employees, but we have to take a look at our own system, making sure that we're providing these great opportunities for our kids. But after that, when they leave AISD, I want to make sure those opportunities are still there for them. That's why this collaboration, this task force has to come together in a unified way so that we're providing these great opportunities for our kids when they're in school and when they're out of school, when they're in Austin and they continue to be Austinites. I think this, again, this work is so important. All means all. And I think that is the right direction. It is the right thing to do, and it'll be the right thing to make even a better Austin.
Thank you. By way of timeline, as you recall, I stood in front of you in July and indicated then that I wanted us to move in this direction with those 2 points. I told you that we would have that group up and working, I hoped, in 60 days. While we did not quite make that, this group has already started working and formed out the group. It was probably a couple months ago that I spoke to the 2 co-chair. They've already had their first meeting with the steering committee couple, 3 weeks ago. So this work is already underway, and this group will be done and disbanded, having done their handoff to the rest of the community by March. It's our presentation. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
As more than one of you noted, Austin has always had institutional racism. So why now? Why not last year? Why not 2 years ago? What was the impetus for this moment? And also, why do you feel the task force should be disbanded if this is an ongoing systemic problem?
The first question is why didn't this happen a year ago or 2 years ago? Or 3 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 7 years ago, or 11 years ago? I don't have a good answer to that question. I would only say that it's better that it's happening this year than next year. The question is, why would the group disband in March? And that's because my emphasis is on actually getting a list of actionable items. And then I think we take those items to the community and to the boards and commissions and council that are already in place. The goal here is not to displace or circumvent the existing governmental and structure we have. It's to bring ideas to that system.
Mayor Adler, could you, excuse me,
Go ahead.
you talked about action. Could you maybe give us a couple examples of what you mean, what you hope to see?
I'm not going to do that, because anything that I would say to you at this point probably would automatically show up in the work of the group. And I want the group to have a whiteboard. I want them to have the opportunity to define and organize and characterize their work themselves. I've given them the charge, and I'm not going to predetermine what their answer is back to the community. Yes?
Does the creation of something like this take on a different tone or sense of urgency given some of the remarks made by our president-elect?
You know, this was not something that was timed to happen around the time of the election. It was happening on an independent course. But I think that the conversations that happened over the course of the campaign, the rhetoric that was used over a length of a period of time, probably has served, I think, to sensitize people to some of the issues that I would hope that this task force would be addressing.
Have you looked at other municipalities across the country to see what they're doing and what has worked?
I would hope that this group would do a better look than I have, and we could ask that question in a second. I know that I've had anecdotally conversations with a lot of mayors in the country, so I generally know what they're doing. Do you want to respond to that?
The answer is yes. Fair and simple. Google is everyone's friend. And after I hung up the phone with Mayor Adler, I went straight to Google to see what other municipalities are doing. Some have failed and some have done well. I know that there are several philanthropic foundations, the Kellogg Foundation, et cetera, that is doing this nationwide. So, and I really feel in my soul that Austin's going to be a trailblazer in this, something that we put forward as a template. All eyes are on us in many ways, and this is an opportunity for the city for those eyes to be on us, and we show something in a very different arena than in the tech space and other of the hard spaces, if you will.
See, you asked a question about research. I should have gone immediately to the academic in the group. Yes.
You talked about, the president's white paper earlier this year talked about how zoning is one key piece of institutional racism that still exists in many ways because it creates barriers for a lot of people with other income, maybe not explicit race, but there are a lot of other implicit factors in there. Is this something that this isn't just something, I guess, how do you expect the recommendations to be pretty broad, to not just touch on programs that the city has, but also really code next, maybe craft code next?
I'm giving the chair persons of this task force wide berth to come back with whatever they think would be most helpful. I was real cognizant of the fact that these are all volunteers and they had other jobs. So when we sat down to talk, to scope this out, we identified those 5 areas so that there would be some measure of construct on the work that was being done here. There would probably be 100 different groups that could have been identified. But within that construct, I'm going to be excited with whatever comes back from the task force.
The 5 areas, sorry, did you mention
The
those?
5 areas that we had identified were criminal and civil justice, education, health, real estate and housing, and finance, banking, and industry. Okay?
Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about
No, go ahead.
Can you talk a little bit about the equity officer, and what effect that this task force will have on that person's job and vice versa?
Well, we could certainly have the equity officer come up and talk. Our hope is to provide, to be a resource for the equity officer.
So I'm Brian Osta, Chief Equity Officer. And so one of the initiatives that the Equity Office is really going to be focused on is the city itself, and really sort of looking at how we can sort of assess how well our city sort of can contribute to actually causing disparities that we see, but also we can play a strong part in actually eliminating the disparity and creating equity within our city. One of the core sort of pieces of the work of the Equity Office will be the development of an equity assessment tool that we would look to use across our city departments and in our budgeting process, so that we can begin to see and identify some of the adverse effects that we may have as a city on the community and vulnerable populations itself. But it also can help us identify opportunities where we can actually create better equity and help eliminate disparities within our community.
What kind of overlap do you expect there to be between this task force and the various minority task forces that are in the city?
The quality of life commissions and those kinds of things in the city, no overlap. This is just a source of trying to provide ideas and concepts for the boards and commissions, for my office, for the council offices to consider. And quite frankly, I would imagine that there'll be things that come out of this that are not directed toward government. I would anticipate that because of the significant involvement of the private market in this task force, that there may very well be challenges or expectations or thoughts or suggestions that arise from and are shared within the business community in the city. This is going to generate ideas for things that people can do. And I hope that the existing infrastructure, the existing systems in the city consider them.
Can you also expand a little bit on the dust up you mentioned earlier, and whether that's, giving you any thoughts on how to approach this?
On the what?
You mentioned that there had been a dust up since this came out yesterday.
Oh, a dust up? A dust up, sorry. I think,
People not excited?
well, I'm not sure it's people excited. I think it's people trying to understand what this is. Whenever you have a conversation about race, especially when you have a conversation about racism, whenever you have a conversation about institutional barriers, I think the first thing that you hear from people is, I know what a racist is, but I don't know what you're talking about when you say racial barriers or institutional racism. And I think that we're talking about concepts that may be new to people and language that may be new to people. Quite frankly, it is my hope that after the work of this group, those words don't cause the same kind of defensiveness, but they signify a call to arms and a challenge for the community, for us to all do together. And quite frankly, you know, when I say dust up, you know, that might be a little bit strong, but as I was coming into work today, every other person I ran into was asking me, so what is this exactly? What does this mean? Who are you going after? You're not aiming at me. What, you know, people were just asking questions, and that's why I was real glad that this was associated with this opportunity to pull people together so that everybody could ask questions. Because virtually everybody I talked to, when we said, now this is what we're trying to do, looked at it and said, okay, if that's what you're trying to do, well, that makes sense to me. And that conversation is long overdue, and that list of action items for our community is long overdue. Goes back to your question, why not a year ago or 5 years ago? It's long overdue. And I think that's good. The fact that there is a conversation that began yesterday about this today is a good thing. I want people talking about this. I want people participating in taking a look at Austin, Texas, and making it better. We love it here, and we can all make it better.
How important is having that open mind?
I'm sorry?
How important is that open mind?
Critical. I mean, this begins with us looking at ourselves, and as I said earlier, owning the fact that as a community we have challenges, and we need to own them first, and then join arms and lock arms, and then go address them.
Mayor, what's the,
Hang on a second, let me start over here.
are there any specific incidents or complaints that kind of helped drive you to this decision that have happened in Austin?
I don't think there were specific incidents or complaints that this is designed to address. The first conversation that we had together happened in July when those incidents happened with the police. But what that did is it just precipitated the conversation, and the takeaway from that was this is a bigger challenge than just criminal justice. This is not about that. It's about everything, including that. And frankly, you know, I attended Ending Racism seminar over the course of a weekend as I was beginning running for this office. So it's been a conversation I've had most recently over the last 2 years associated with that. And I had the opportunity to chair the Anti-Defamation League in Austin over an extended period of time. And that was a lot of the work of that organization. So it's something that has been important to me, as it's been important to the people that you see up here, the folks up here longer than me. But it goes back again to that question. The only thing, there is no good answer to why this hasn't already happened, other than it needs to happen, and thank goodness it's happening now. Anything else?
Yes.
Yes.
Mayor Adler, so after the honest conversations and the Bring the Action Plan, how long are you going to take to put those in?
Well, this task force is going to take these ideas and those action items and give them to the community. And how long it takes the community to respond to that is going to be up to the community. I will tell you that sight unseen, it is my intention to starting to cobble together a critical mass of folks to further what this group does. But I would imagine that there are going to be lots of council offices that are going to be real eager to help move these things forward, as with the boards and commissions. So I would anticipate taking the work of this group very seriously and actually putting it on the ground. Anything else?
Yeah, I have a follow-up question.
Sure.
So you're saying you're giving it to the community, but the catalyst of this were the Breon King and the David Joseph. So doesn't that involve city government looking at those incidents differently, those situations?
I think that the work of this could very easily have us looking at those incidents differently, looking at lots of incidents differently, and I think that's an important thing for this group to do. I also hope we look at access to capital in this city differently because of the work of this group. I hope that we look at housing and housing opportunity and the delivery of health care in this city differently after the work of this group. I hope that this has us looking at ourselves differently at the end of the working of this group. Anything else?
Would either of the co-chairs be willing to share some concrete items you hope to be in this action plan?
Like Mayor Adler, it's a clean slate. It's a whiteboard. And that's how we get creative. That's how we get to something that's truly affects change. If we had something predetermined, if we already had a solution, then we would be limiting ourselves, and we don't want to limit ourselves. And one thing I want to add to this conversation is there will be other byproducts, very positive byproducts, that come out of this besides what comes out in March, that the recommendations that go to Mayor Adler. And that will be the individuals that are serving on the steering committee are thought leaders in our community. And as a result of going through this exercise in their own individual operations, they may change things. Well, actually, I won't even say may. Just from our first meeting, it makes people perceive and look at things differently when you're involved in this kind of work. So there's that byproduct that comes out of it in the banking industry, in the healthcare industry, in the education, the world of education. So we have thought leaders that are at the table having these conversations and thinking about in our own world, what can we do differently? So it's the plan that goes to the mayor at the end, and then there's individual byproducts that happen as a result of forming, and that's a very positive thing. So individuals will change in their personal and as well as their professional lives.
I also don't want to speculate as to what it's going to be, because I do think it has to be an open process. But what I can say is what we've already been doing. It didn't just start. This is a task force that's just come together under the guidance division of the mayor. But it's something we've already been doing. So just very recently, we announced a partnership with the city around community schools. It is about everybody coming together and all means all. We've also had a partnership around My Brother's Keeper with the city of Austin and also with the county and with the Greater Austin Chamber and with the Hispanic Chamber and the Black Chamber, all coming together about My Brother's Keeper and that initiative. We are, Austin ISD, we are sponsoring COSBAC, which is the national version of MBK as far as working with boys of color. And so we're sponsoring that as a school system. So again, these are things we've already been doing. We have already embarked on an equity study to look at our graduation rates to see who's graduating, who isn't. We've also been looking at who is continuing on to a more rigorous course of study and who isn't. And we'll also look at suspension rates because we see some differentiation there that we don't like to see. But the only way to do something about it is to do something about it. And so these things have already been are already occurring, and I do see them being continuing on into the future.
One last thought on that point. None of this is happening in isolation. So we talked earlier about, I think someone asked a question about how does this overlap. Nothing is happening in isolation. There is no one thing or one entity that can address this or that can fix this. It's going to take a combination of things. It's going to take the entire community in our own individual walks and our own individual what we do in our professional lives, et cetera. So, and we have members from the chambers of commerce that are on either the working groups or on the steering committee. We have members for the African American Quality of Life Commission that were instrumental in putting that plan together. And when I was making some of the phone calls asking people would they be engaged, would they be willing to do this work on behalf of the mayor, I did receive responses such that, how is this going to be different? And what's going to make this different is the will to make it different. And that happens with individuals. That doesn't happen with the mayor putting a charge forward to a task force. This happens from individuals having the will to do the heavy lifting and the hard work. And from the first meeting that we had, everyone in that room has the will. The timing is perfect in the nation. For whatever whatever the catalysts are, the timing is perfect. So it's an opportunity to move things forward. Either we sit back and we continue to talk about it, or we have that will and we actually start doing actionable things. So there is overlap, but there is community working together. It's going to take every individual to do something. And whatever that something is in your sphere of influence, the concept is to do something.
All right, thank you very much.